Welcome back to our continuing study in the Gospel of Matthew. In this next portion, we are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 26 and verse 35. You will have probably noticed if you have looked at a number of these videos, I make reference to and use a number of English translations. And basically, what I have used throughout the study are books that are within my own library, with a couple of exceptions. The problem, of course, for any English speaker who desires to read the Bible is that there is basically, well, to kind of rephrase what Solomon said, there's basically no end in sight when it comes to reading English translations of Scripture. The English translations of Scripture continue to proliferate. I'm going to, in this next section, read just one verse, and I'm going to turn to the New Testament for everyone. This has a 2011 copyright, so relatively new translation. And this one is done by N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright is a fascinating figure. He is a retired bishop in the Anglican Church, but his, as it were, I don't want to be quite say it this way, but in a way, his real job was as a New Testament scholar. And so he is one of those rare breeds who is a first-rate scholar who had the ability to speak and work in the life of the everyday. Nothing against scholars per se, but not everyone has that ability to take what they do in academic depth and turn around and speak it in everyday. So this is the New Testament for everyone, and this is Matthew chapter 26 and verse 35. Even if I have to die with you, said Peter to him, I won't ever deny you. And all the disciples said the same. The life of discipleship is not for the faint-hearted. It is not easy to be a follower of Jesus. Now, when that is said, we need to step back and make something clear. There is a danger that we can create two types of Christians or more. Basically, it can be two types or a multiple track system of whether you want to be, a super duper Christian, just a super Christian, just a Christian, or just get over the finish line type of Christian. There is that sort of possibility. And there's always been a market in the church to kind of say that, oh, you can be Christian on your own terms, and we will cater a faith experience and structure for you. And the point we're making is that the New Testament makes it very clear there's no such thing as the super Christian, the ones who are spiritually elite and do the wondrous exploits. I guess you could say the Superman of Christianity. And so there's two mistakes here. One is to say that there's a basic level of Christian life, living, or plan. You just do these basics and you get in. That's the first mistake. The second is to say that there is a premium level of Christian experience. Rather, it is that the fact that the Christian experience is the same to all and common to all. You see, there are only one type of Christians, and they are those that embrace the life of discipleship. He or she who chooses not to be a disciple, according to Jesus, chooses not to be a follower of him. And the last reading, I was harsh on Peter. I was, but that does not mean I was unfair. If anyone aspires to be a disciple, he or she will have to grapple with the same issues that Peter did. And this way we see that Peter was half right. The problem is that to be half right is not good enough. Peter understood on one level that to follow Jesus, he must be prepared to die. It is like the marking, in a math class. I don't know if you've encountered this maybe in your own math class or for your child's math class, where a teacher might mark a problem that the child worked on in this way. The person gets the answer wrong, but the person can still get marks on that problem because when the teacher looks at it, they can see the steps that the person took to try and resolve the problem, solve the problem. And so they get marks for setting out the problem and understanding what it was needed to work on the problem. They might have got the answer wrong, but as long as they had some understanding, they can still get marks. You may get the answer to the problem wrong, but you got marks from the teacher, for she could see the way you set out the problem. You understood what needed to be done. You see, Peter understood that to be a follower of Jesus requires death to self. What he failed to grasp was how he had to personally die to self. In other words, Peter was willing to lay down his life. But was Peter actually willing to die to his own agenda, ambitions, wishes? And the answer seems to be more murky. And in fact, no. There is a cognitive side to faith. What we mean is that we can set out what it means to live as a Christian. We can list the things that Christians do, such as tithing or prayer. We can talk about how a person new to faith must change their understanding of what is good and wholesome, on what is good and wholesome entertainment. We can give pointers on how to use one's time more effectively for the kingdom. The point is that we can create a pamphlet or book on what Christian living is about. There is a place for this, and there is nothing wrong about it. The problem comes when people make this the Christian faith. This is not a substitute for actually living out the faith. You see, at a certain point, we must actually internalize these truths for them to be effective. The issue at the end of the day is not whether we die for Jesus. No, it is whether we die to self. This was Peter's ultimate problem. Peter was still Peter, and Peter was willing to die for Jesus, but not die for self. You and I, as long as we are you and I, that is the problem. Peter had to come to that place where he was no longer Lord of his life. He had to come to that point that Jesus truly was Lord, not Lord in some abstract philosophical sort of way. None of us easily or simply dies to self. We are Lord of our lives and will cling to that. To be a disciple who overcomes the world is to be someone who has experienced the liberating power of dying to self and living for Jesus. Paul, in fact, puts it this way in Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, the New International Version. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me.